Hi, everyone. Ted Wyman here with another edition of Jet Setting, where we talk about everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets. I'm joined by Winnipeg Sun hockey writer Scott Billeck to discuss the week that has been and look ahead. Of course, one of the biggest things that happened this week was the return of Paul Maurice with the Florida Panthers to visit the Winnipeg Jets on Tuesday. And Scott, is it fair to say that the Jets were pretty jazzed up about beating their old coach?
Yeah, I think you can say that. I think it started in the morning. Paul Maurice was here, obviously, but Mark Scheifele was asked to talk about it, and he was asked to essentially say something nice about Paul Maurice, and kind of declined to do so. Which kind of said, kind of told the whole story, and it was interesting. I figured Mark Scheifele was going to be very motivated for this game, and you could see it from the opening puck drop. He scored the opening goal in the game. He was pretty happy about that one. He scored the fourth goal in the game. The Jets beat the Maurice's Florida Panthers 4-2 or 5-2, sorry. But yeah, you got a real sense that this team really wanted to. I don't know if stick it to him is the right term, but wanted to prove their point and make a statement. And I thought they did. I thought the Jets made a statement. I think I've been told, you hear some things, all that, it's people were kind of upset the way it happened. Some players took it pretty hard, and then your head coach, he walks out on you. Not only does he do that, but 6 months later, he takes a job somewhere else, greener pastures perhaps. And that just hasn't been the case so far. The Winnipeg Jets are flying high, 16-7-1 right now. Atop of the Central Division on this Wednesday morning, and the Florida Panthers are still a point out of the playoff spot right now, and so you go from the President's Trophy winning team to out of the playoffs, and the Jets go from a miserable wreck last season to the top team in the Central Division. I think that's that's one of the things that Paul Maurice can see in the standings, but the Jets kind of showed them where they're at this year under Rick Bowness, and they seem to be happy about it.
Well, there, you just mentioned the name that has been the biggest difference maker for the Winnipeg Jets this year. Well, aside from Connor Hellebuyck, who's having an amazing season, Josh Morris, Mark Scheifele, I mean, on the ice, those guys are having amazing seasons, but Rick Bowness has made the difference with this team. And there's just no doubt about it. I had the chance to talk to guys like Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon last week. We've heard Mark Scheifele talk about it before. These players are recognizing that they are getting a better coaching for their needs this year than they were last year. And, Brendan Dillon didn't mince any words. It was like, yeah, you got a guy that quits in the middle of the season on you. And then the new coach who comes in is the interim head coach. He's the father of one of the guys on your team. He said, that's weird. So, I mean, it might seem to us that it would be weird, but they're pros and maybe they deal with those things. Well, no, it does sound like it had an effect. And what it really seems like is that Rick Bowness came in here and brought a fresh take on coaching. He's very much a teacher. He's very good at taking players to task. I mean, we haven't even talked about that yet. They win it against Anaheim on Sunday, 5-2. Well, Bowness wasn't happy one bit. He lets everyone know just what he thought of their performance, and coupling that with a bad performance against the Columbus Blue Jackets last Friday, he was not a happy man, and he lets those players know. And Nate Schmidt told me we embrace that. We appreciate that honesty. You know where you stand, and you better get out there and do a better job the next time. Took them a bit against Anaheim. They looked great against Florida. Maybe the extra motivation, but you're around that team quite a bit. Is that just the sense that you get that these players are just a happier bunch?
Yeah, I mean, it's been palpable almost since day one. Like Rick Bowness put in some work during the summer to call every guy up. He golfed in Halifax or just outside of Halifax with Morgan Barron just randomly because they were both out there. I believe he was at Josh Morrissey's wedding later in the summer. I think that was in August. So Rick Bowness made a point to build a relationship with the players before he started to kind of like tear it down a bit. Obviously starting with stripping the captaincy from Blake Wheeler and going from there. But Rick Bowness basically made it like, you would call him a bit of a player's coach, but who runs the room, right? Like he's given the room to the players, but it's not just one or two players like it used to be. right? It's not Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler's room or whatever. This is every single one of those guys' room right now. And when it's not working, Rick Bowness will go and tell them exactly what's not working. And then he'll come to the pulpit in the Matt Frost Media Center and tell the media and essentially the fans exactly what's not working. It was a breath of fresh air after the Anaheim win to see a head coach, and he's done this before, but we kind of got robbed of it a little bit early on the season because he was out with COVID. So some of those games, the LA game, the Vegas game, both that you were at, where the starts weren't great and the games just weren't that good. Bowness wasn't there to kind of, I guess, tell it like it is, for lack of a better term. But he's doing that now. A 5-2 win, you're like, okay, well, that's a good win. And in different times, that would be heralded. That would have been a celebrated victory. The Jets stayed in the fight, yada, yada, yada. No, Rick Bowness didn't like the start, and that's what he talked about. It was great that the Jets got the win, according to him, but at the end of the day, they got it in the way that is not going to win them hockey games, according to Rick Bowness, especially when it comes to crunch time, to playoff time, if they're in the heat of a battle, to even get a playoff spot. So that's kind of been his thing. It's keeping everybody accountable, everybody kind of on their toes. It's not maybe the fear of God per se, but it's the fear that, it's the motivation that everything needs to be played the right way and the structure needs to be upheld, win or lose. And Rick Bowness has done a really good job of that. And I know you've seen it, you've been on the road, and you've seen kind of Rick Bowness in action at times here even. I think he's been really good for this team. And I think he's been really good for guys like Mark Scheifele and those guys. And, I'll throw it back to you here, but like, I think he's instilled a belief and a purpose in a lot of these guys. And you talk to other guys too, but there's just a lot of black and white, right? Like, that's what it seems like. No gray area anymore.
Yeah, that's very important. I can't help but wonder if how long of a shelf life does that have though, if you're constantly saying that wasn't good enough, or you're saying it in the media. Nate Schmidt did tell me that, we appreciate that he comes in and he says that exact thing to us first, and then he goes and says to the media that we were bad, and at least that, that's important to them. They don't want to have him just throwing them under the bus in the media, but that kind of coaching doesn't always last forever. The effectiveness of that, you can't just berate your team all the time. Yeah. I don't see Rick Bowness as being like that, but you just wonder. It means a lot right now. It's fresh. He's the new guy here. He's brought so much different to the culture of the team, and they're playing well. So I'm sure it resonates very well right now.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's like you can't do that style forever, in my opinion. But that's something to worry about another day. As for the way the Jets are playing, it's been the same story all year, hasn't it? It's Connor Hellebuck's playing fantastic hockey. They're getting big goals from their big guys. Kyle Connor coming through with a couple of big ones. You got Mark Scheifele playing real good hockey. Blake Wheeler's been playing very well. The defense is doing its job. I mean, there's real balance there, and I really have been impressed by the bottom six of this team, not necessarily because of the big numbers they're putting up, but because of their solid possession and because they seem to be very strong contributors to the Jets' cause. And maybe in some years that wasn't necessarily the case, but that third line right now, and it's not even the configuration you expected from the start of the season, is very effective. It's there's some bangers and crashers out there. There's guys that can put the puck in the net on every line, and I think that is really helping what the Jets are doing. I'm not gonna, you can color me shocked, Scott, because I never would have predicted this team to be 16-7-1 at this point of the season. It's making for some happy times for people in Winnipeg. How come they're not coming out to the games though? That's one question. We'll wrap it up on this, but honestly, the crowds are smaller than ever at at Canada Life Center, and is it concerning, or are we just looking at a blip that's going to come back?
It's a good question, right? I mean, I've talked to people about this. I've had debates with people on social media about this. Why aren't people coming to the game? Because sometimes when you post the attendance numbers, people get on you. Oh, why do you care? Or why are you obsessed with the attendance numbers? Well, I'm not really obsessed with it, but it is a story when you're 2,000 people short every night, in the smallest rink outside of Arizona in the NHL. This is a team that depends on ticket sales. It depends on people coming in because they don't have a 20,000 seat arena or a 17,000 or a 19,000 seat arena like a lot of these NHL rinks do. And so when you're missing 2,000 people at a 20,000 ranked stadium, you still have 18,000. The Jets would kill some nights to have, and even in the past, in the early years, to have an 18,000 seat arena. But now you're seeing 30. I think last night was 13,426, something like that. So I think one of the issues. I think there's a lot of issues, right? I mean, people. Well, we're in a bit of a recession right now, so that kind of takes that. It's Christmas is coming up. Money there. People have been hammered over the pandemic. There's still hesitancy there. The team was bad last year, and a lot of people maybe not just willing to commit their money yet, right? Maybe prove it to me a little bit more. And then there's just I think there's just a lot of different factors playing into this. You can see it though. The Jets are charging $49 a ticket on Tuesday. It gets you a free beer. They're trying to do different things here. But last night, I mean, you could go on StubHub. It looked like you could buy tickets for as low as $25 right now. I believe the StubHub tickets, I think those are already sold. So they're kind of like resale or whatever. But it's easy to come to a Jets game now for a reasonably cheap cost. But yeah, I mean, I think it is a little bit concerning because this team needs gate, right? They need the gate to be as high as it can be. Are people going to come back? Are fans going to trust in the product again? Does the fan experience need to change? We're on the road. We see different rinks. Winnipeg would rank, in my opinion, on the lower end of the fan experience scale. I'm not just talking about the places like Seattle and Vegas were put on a big show or anything like that. I'm talking about Minnesota or Dallas or even Chicago, where they just do different things and do things differently. The Jets are sending a lot of people from their front office that on the road to kind of watch this stuff. Not sure it's sort of translated yet into the fan experience, but they are changing some things. To the Jets' credit, they are changing some of their in-game stuff. But there's still ways to go to catch up to some of these other towns who need to do it, right? Like, I mean, I'm going on a bit here, but if you look at a team like Dallas, right? The Dallas Stars have one of the biggest rinks in the NHL. They compete with the Mavericks. They compete with the NFL. They compete with Major League Baseball for people's money. They still draw pretty good crowds there, and the fan experience, I want to say, in Dallas is probably second to none. Like, I mean, Vegas and all that, it's a show. Dallas, it's a really good place to watch a hockey game, from the music to the things they do to the just everything, the food options and all that kind of stuff. It's a great place to be. I get that this is a Canadian market and it's different, and you don't really have to maybe sell the product as much. But at the same time, the Jets are 2,000 seats short almost every night right now. They do need to start selling the product again. And part of that's got to be the fan experience, in my opinion, along with kind of dealing with some of the other pressures that are just on society as a whole right now.
Yeah, you hit it bang on, Scott, to be honest. And that's the truth, is that they didn't feel like they needed to have that same fan experience in Winnipeg as they did in other places, because the game sold itself. And that's what sold the tickets, the excitement over having a team, the brand of the Jets, the game itself, the NHL, the players coming in, everything. That's just not the case right now. And for all the reasons you described, that's not the case. It's lost some of its luster. The question is, can you get it back? And I do think the Jets are going to have to work a little bit harder at it, and it does seem like they are. So hopefully that picks up in the new year. In the past iteration of the Jets, they would get pretty poor crowds up until Christmas, and then they would gradually start to grow after in the new year. And I mean, with as you said, a recession and Christmas coming up, people are certainly not looking to spend too much on frivolities like a hockey game. But hey, again, we will see where that goes from here on in. Scott, thank you very much for joining me today. For Scott Billeck, I'm Ted Wyman. You've been watching Jets Setting on WinnipegSun.com.